Our second speaker is the director of the Art Genome Project. Welcome, Jessica Backus.
So when the artist Lee Krasner first saw the work of Jackson Pollock, she described the epiphany of standing before his art as a bomb going off. So for her, Pollock had really revolutionized what painting could be. This metaphor of a bomb going off itself, I think, really drives home the power that art can have for us. It can really blow apart our understanding of what's possible and force us to reevaluate the order of things and our place within them. They can be resonance chambers for emotion. They can be a nexus for power and politics. They can be a pivot point for interaction. And a lot like humans, they can also sometimes be mercurial and opaque. So I think it's worth noting that not all of our reactions to art have to be positive. In fact, a lot of what makes modern art so powerful is that it might just confuse or disgust or maybe even just bore us. So if you add to this the fact that the art world is known to be really impenetrable and opaque, it's no wonder that so many of us have so many negative emotions related to art. Something that the artist Tracey Emin has said about art. She says, modern art is merely the means by which we terrorize ourselves. And so I think what she's getting at there is this question about art, this sort of twofold nature of it. On the one hand, it's challenging in its own right, and I think that's a good thing. But on the other hand, the art world itself is challenging, opaque, and generally inaccessible to most people. So is there something about the two of these things, like art's almost inaccessibility, its challenging nature, and the inaccessible nature of the institutions that have arisen around it? Does it have to be this way? I joined a company called Artsy 3 years ago because I didn't think it had to be. Artsy's mission is to make all the world's art available to anyone with an internet connection. And this is a huge mission. If we look at today, we have a growing database of 300,000 works of art by 40,000 artists. This is also the largest online repository of contemporary art. In our effort to democratize the art world, we knew that we had to work with the existing players. And we've built our platform through partnerships with over 3,000 galleries, 500 museums, 40 art fairs, and 17 auctions throughout the world. And so the result for us is an art world, is that we bring the entire art world online in one place. We believe that our platform should possess a quality worthy of art. And now, traditionally, these two goals of quality and quantity are viewed as being at odds with each other. So how do we bring all of the world's art online, but do it in a way that doesn't just create a mass of unnavigable information? You know, if you think about a standard art exhibition, they might have a few hundred works at most. We have 300,000. So how do we make this information accessible and interesting to our users? And so for us, especially since we have these high standards of a quality worthy of art, it's not just about decreasing information overload. It's also about doing it in a way that really aspires to the high standards of the content we host. At Artsy, we really want to learn from the way that art is presented offline to sort of fundamentally understand the logic and the impact of an in-person art experience and try to translate that, find an appropriate metaphor for the digital world. The in-person experience, it's a full-body, immersive experience, whereas online, we can really hope to strive for an appropriate metaphor for this. And how do we as a website create an architecture worthy of art? How do we evoke the ideal viewing conditions for art or the experience of discovery, of going from one gallery to the next and coming across new works that you never knew about before? And how do we give our audience a sense of being part of something bigger, of being part of the art world, or being part of the history and culture in which art is embedded? This is where curation comes in for us. And of course, many of us tend to think about curation as merely selecting. But it's really more than just that. A curator, we may learn, in the fine arts context, tends to be someone who has the care and superintendence of something. And now, what does this mean when we look at Artsy? It means building and then also caring for our digital collection. We're building a digital collection to serve the public. And in fact, we have an entire team at Artsy devoted to this. It's led by our chief content curator. And from the very beginning, it was an important part of our strategy to make sure that we're a superb educational resource. And what that meant is being encyclopedic. So having everything from medieval manuscripts to French Impressionists to art that was created last year and might be on view at a current art fair. The second part of this equation is that we're constantly evolving how we present this collection, and this is a huge undertaking at Artsy. There are many teams involved. I wanted to sort of think about one particular aspect of curation that goes a little bit beyond this idea of stewardship. So it's an idea that sort of, if we want to look at a little bit of history here, came into being in the 1960s. So it's this idea that curators are people who make exhibitions. Then the question becomes, what does an exhibition do? A good exhibition unfurls a message over time, so that walking from artwork to artwork can be a little bit like listening to a poem unveil its message over time. As one of my colleagues said, I like to think of curation as being more than just choosing. I like to think of it as the time-based creation of a pathway from one object or experience to the next, in a way so that the sequence of seeing or hearing itself becomes something worthy of consideration. Another colleague said, the experience of a curated environment is an exercise in creative and intellectual agility. It compels the viewer to move between seemingly distinct realms of experience. How do we create an experience worthy of art? How do we allow people to have that epiphany that comes through serendipity? So one of the primary ways that we can do this is through the Art Genome Project. The Art Genome Project is a classification system that includes about 1,000 categories of art. We call them genes, hence the Art Genome Project. And these range from everything from the visual, like dotted or striped, to the more conceptual, like nostalgia or art that plays with scale. And the end result is that we can create a very nuanced profile of any artist or artwork. We can use the profile of any artist or work to match it to another similar artist or work, meaning that you can browse endlessly, jumping from one artist to another similar artist or work. What we see through browsing via the Art Genome Project is that this online experience can take us towards connections that exist in the real world. Or we might also find that it can take us in entirely new directions on an unexpected path. We can allow users to discover art from all different time periods and geographic regions, artworks that otherwise wouldn't come into contact with each other in the real world. I mentioned at the beginning of my talk that art is, in essence, a social actor, and a final piece of the puzzle for us is that we want to provide users not just a pathway for discovery, but also really the ability to see works of art in their social context, to sort of get everything that happens around them, which is the entire art world. So if you're a user on Artsy, you'll see that we present the art in like many, many different ways, which are constantly evolving. And we really want to provide our users as many inroads as we can, and we really put them in the driver's seat as well. One of the sort of primary missions of our editorial team, of course, is to create stories that are intelligent, accessible, and really reach a global art world. And if any of you have read a lot of art writing out there, you know it might not always be the most easy to interpret. And as you see through all of this, curation for us is just one small part of the puzzle, and we really think of it as going above and beyond that. Ultimately, we do want to provide discovery to our users, serendipity and pathways to find out something new. But we also want to be our users' guide to the art world, to sort of hold their hand through something bigger and allow them to experience the complex global art world. Or if I can use Duchamp's words again, we want them to have a rendezvous with art, to fall in love with it. And we want to do this in a way that really meets the high standards of the art that we have on Artsy. Thank you.